Growing up, all I wanted when I was in middle school was an Xbox 360. It came out November 2005. And in middle school, I remember that year asking my dad and my mom, please, this is all I want. I just want this for my birthday or for Christmas. And my dad promptly said, no, you're not getting that. Well, then I thought I had a workaround. I'm like, I'm going to go to grandma and grandpa and they can get it for me. And my dad said, no, they're not getting it for you. I was so frustrated. He said, you can go to your friend's house to play it, but you're not playing it here. You're not having a PlayStation. You're not having an Xbox. You're having none of that here. And I remember I got so fixated on the fact that I didn't have that all through middle school and the beginning of high school that I completely overlooked so many other things that I had because all I wanted was that thing. Oftentimes, when we focus in on what we don't have, we miss all the things that we do. We focus in on that thing or that toy or that experience that we didn't have or that we don't have, and we missed all the times in which we were so abundantly blessed. And it's easy sometimes to look at that when we were kids, like, oh, that toy or that vacation, that experience. But let's be honest, adults, we're the same. We do the same thing. We compare ourselves to our neighbors, our coworkers, our siblings, our friends. They have that car, that house, that job, that experience, that vacation, and we start hyper focusing sometimes on what we don't have to the detriment of what we do and completely overlook God's blessings. This first Sunday, this first weekend of Lent, we hear in the scriptures about what happens when we're in that space because that is the place in which the evil one, the devil, wants to just mess up and destroy our relationships and the peace within us. St. Francis of Sales says that the devil's one goal is to take away your peace. And it's when we hyper focus, when we focus in on what we don't have, that we allow the evil one, we allow the devil in to take our peace. We hear this weekend in the Catholic Church these two readings that talk about this. We have the gospel where Jesus is tempted in the desert. And we also have the first reading where Adam and Eve are tempted by the serpent. Looking at Jesus in the desert, we read, it's the fourth chapter of the Gospel of Matthew, we hear it from. And I love the little details in scriptures because it's in those little details that oftentimes we see God at work. And so it says in the fourth chapter that Jesus is right after he was baptized in the Jordan by John. He's about to start his ministry, but he goes out into the desert to fast for 40 days and 40 nights, where we get our 40 days of Lent from, is Jesus' 40 days in the desert. And it says after 40 days and 40 nights, he fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, and he was hungry. I love that phrase that the gospel writer Matthew decided to put in there. Like, of course he was hungry. Like, no kidding, right? But he put it in there. It's because it's in that space that the evil one comes in and starts tempting Jesus, saying, look at these stones, make them into bread, because the evil one knows he doesn't have any food, that he is hungry, he doesn't have it. And Jesus responds, one shall not live on bread alone, but by every word that comes forth from the mouth of God, pointing to what he does have. And then the evil one, the devil, takes them to look at the holy city Jerusalem, saying, this could be yours. And Jesus says, no. He looks at all that he has. And then the evil one takes him and shows every kingdom, every city in the world, saying, bow down to me and worship me. And Jesus says, get away from me, Satan. And the devil flees from him. We see Jesus, who doesn't focus in on what he doesn't have. He doesn't have food at the time. He doesn't have other people around. He doesn't have power in the human sense. But if he did, that's where the evil one wants to play into that. We look at the first reading in Genesis where we see what happens when we do focus in on what we don't have with Adam and Eve. So we know the story. God creates Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and he places a tree in the center. It says, you shall eat from any tree in the garden except for that one tree that's in the center of the garden. Do not eat from it. And then the snake comes onto the scene, and the snake says, oh, so God says you can't eat from any tree. Playing into that. And Eve says, oh no, we could eat from any tree in the garden except from the tree in the center of the middle of the garden. From that tree we shall not eat or even touch, thus we will die. If you listen carefully, again, I said in the details, God never said that. God did not say you can't touch it. He just said you can't eat it. And I think this is oftentimes what happens with our what we don't have, when we focus in on what we don't have. Because at first it's just something I don't have. Well, then it's something that I want. Then it's something I need. And then it's something I'm going to take. We see that with Eve. At first, it's just, I can't eat from this tree, but there's hundreds, thousands, millions of other trees and fruit that I can eat from. So it's just something that I don't have. But then, because the serpent, the evil one, just asks those questions, it no longer is what I don't have, but it's what I want. We see that shift within Eve, and we see that shift within our own hearts at times. At first, it's, well, I just don't have this. But now it's something I want. And then it grows more. It's something I need. And then it's something that I'm going to take, completely pushing out all the blessings that God has given already in our life. And I think that's the key for us as we enter into these next 40 days of the desert, these next 40 days of Lent for us, is to shift from what I don't have to the blessings that God has given to me. And so I want to offer us two ways today. One is super practical, and the other one is spiritual. So the super practical one is something we oftentimes tell our children all the time: count your blessings. So today, if you're watching this video, if you're listening to this, I want you to count your blessings for today, from this week, from this month, and this year. Just take a time and highlight, what is it that God has done? What are the great blessings? Because I guarantee you that there have been more blessings than things that you don't have in your life this past day, week, month, and year. So count your blessings. And the second is spiritual, and we get this right from Jesus in the gospel. So Jesus says at the end of the gospel, "Get away from me, Satan." The name of Jesus is powerful. That's why the second commandment is, you shall not take the Lord your God's name in vain. That we don't use it flippantly in conversation. We don't use it as a curse, because the name of Jesus is holy and powerful. And so I want to offer you this little prayer when we're feeling tempted, when we start hyper focusing on what we don't have, and we start feeling that pressure, that desire in our heart building for the things of the world. And that is, in the name of Jesus, I reject that lie. In the name of Jesus, I reject that lie that I don't have enough. In the name of Jesus, I reject that lie that I'm never going to be enough. In the name of Jesus, I reject that lie of whatever it is. I think in counting our blessings and using that spiritual rejection of the lie of the evil and whispering in our ear, we can refocus on the blessings that Jesus has given us this Lent. Looking back on my time in middle school, I see the blessings now that I missed then, because I was so focused on not having the Xbox 360. Because I think one of the great blessings as a result of not having that is that I then spent tons of time with my friends. Because otherwise I would be just in the basement of my parents' house playing video games. Well, now I had to go to my friend's house. We got together in groups and had LAN parties and everything else. And all of a sudden there's these better memories, instead of just playing video games and wasting my time away in my parents' basement by myself, that I was then with friends doing these things. And at the time, I did not see it as a blessing. But looking back, I definitely can. And so as we begin Lent, let us look at what it is that God has blessed us with, not what we don't have, but the things that God has given to us. God bless.